Hello everyone, welcome along to Betfair's preview of Round 8 of the National Rugby League. I'm Mathew Thompson. Great to have you with us as we have a look at what should be another fantastic weekend of matches in the NRL. It's been super competitive over the first 8 weeks. Let's hope that continues. Tim Gilbert's back. We were on fire last week.
Had a good week, all bar Monday. I think we both went Titans and the Panthers got home in a pretty strong display by them. The Titans weren't at their best, but the Panthers, I tell you what, they've got something in the kit bag, haven't they?
Well, when they get it together, they're such a hard team to stop, and I'm a bit disappointed, though, because I made my best bet of the weekend, the Warriors, last week, at the outside odds. They started at $2.90 on Betfair. Stacey Jones has missed the drop goal from 10 out, right in front, and they finished at 14 all, and that was a cracking game. That might be one of the games of the season so far.
In the wet at Olympic Park, which is the graveyard for Melbourne, it was such a high-quality game of football. The drop ball just wasn't there, was it? They both played particularly well, and I suppose in the end 14 points all was a reasonable result.
Now I reckon that 14-all draw might set Melbourne up pretty nicely for this game on Friday night, the rematch of the grand final, and I reckon this is just about one of the most important games of the year. Don't worry about it being round 8. Manly need to win. They're $200 into $12.50 to win the wooden spoon with Betfair this week. Such has been their start to the year. And the Melbourne Storm, they've been a little bit up and down. $1.67 Melbourne at the moment, Manly $1.92. Those prices will probably get a bit better as game day draws ever closer. But what a game this is at Brookie.
Yeah, it is. It's a beauty. But the problem in it is, again, for Manly, no Brett Stewart. I look at Michael Robertson, a fullback, whether or not they twist that around and decide to give someone else a go, because he's a fine winger. He's an outstanding flanker. But at fullback, I just don't know whether he's got the positional play there. But I can't go past Melbourne Storm. I think Melbourne, they won this corresponding game here last year, didn't they? And I think Melbourne to win.
Yep, I'm going to go with Melbourne as well. They're not playing as well as they might like either, with the attack probably not clicking as it might, but with Brett Finch an extra week to hone those combinations, they might come good this week, Melbourne, so we'll see. It should be a great game either way. North Queensland versus Parramatta here. Parramatta feeling a woeful. They've been hammered off the park in the last 2 weeks, and North Queensland are coming good, and they're my best bet of the weekend, Timmy.
They were better last week, I thought, Parramatta, and the scoreline was big, but they come across a Brisbane side that, again, were absolutely outstanding.
Parramatta were better?
Well, they were better against the Brisbane Broncos, for sure. I thought they were.
Well, they must have been ordinary the week before.
Well, they were. That's the thing. And I think a lot of people have said that they were better against the Broncos. The scoreline, 40 points to 8, obviously looks like they got absolutely flogged, but they come up against a superior team last week, and Brisbane won. Okay, I do digress. In this game, I cannot bet on Parramatta. It has to go the way of the Cowboys. The Cowboys were better last weekend in beating Manly. Jonathan Thurston is getting back to some of his best form. He's a week away from a test match, and we're then into the Origin season. Jonathan Thurston will do it on his ear.
Might have been one of the stories of last weekend too, the criticism that Lockyer and Thurston had copped in the weeks leading into last round. They both responded with great games last week, and Thurston was terrific.
Yeah, North Queensland for me.
All right, let's move on. Another important game, this one, the Gold Coast Titans versus South Sydney. The Titans, they're very disappointing on Monday night against the Panthers. The market at the moment sees the Gold Coast Titans $1.51 and Souths $2.30. What a price.
Yeah, that's not
for
bad.
One of the informed teams.
Yeah, not bad money, is it, for Souths? But I suppose that's closely linked to the fact that they're playing at Skilled Park, which they have built as a pretty imposing place to travel to. They were poor against Penrith. They were good against Melbourne in Melbourne. They were good against North Queensland in North Queensland. They'll be good at home against the Rabbitohs.
And Rogers both known to come back as well.
I've got to have the Gold Coast Titans to sneak home against the Rabbits, but they'll make them earn it.
All right, I'm going to tip the Rabbitohs. I've just got a feeling that the more this season goes on, I think the better they're going to get South Sydney. And I think Chris Sando, another one that responded to criticism, he hadn't been playing well, but hit back in fine fashion last weekend, and I think they've got enough points in them to get the money there at Skilled Park.
Yeah, they leaked a lot of points against the Sharks last week, though, didn't they? They almost were beaten at the end of that game. I think Gold Coast at home will get them.
All right then, the Sharks against the Roosters. What do we expect from this game? Both coaches we know are under the pump, particularly Ricky Stewart and his team now welded to the foot of the ladder. That's what I'm trying to say. And obviously a lot of pressure on Brad Fittler as well. In fact, Brad Fittler's probably got Ricky Stewart to thank for the fact that he hasn't come under more pressure.
Yeah, I think at home, Toyota Park, they were better last week, the Sharks, without getting the chocolates. I have to put all my mock on the Sharks. I think the Sharks will beat the Roosters at home at Toyota.
The Roosters are favourites. They're $1.58 at the moment on Betfair against $1.88 the Sharks. That market will definitely become more liquid and the prices will get better there as the game draws ever closer. Next game. Good game this. Newcastle versus the Brisbane Broncos. Both teams we know are going fantastic. How did Newcastle get beat by the mighty Tigers last week? 24-10 with about 15 minutes to go, and then Benji Marshall stepped up to the plate and put them to the sword, really. But they played pretty well last week, Newcastle. In fact, they've been going well all year.
Yeah, they were, but I say they were because they've got injury now. Ben Cross's injury and Jared Mullen, it's going to take a lot out of them. Brian Smith wasn't happy at all, was he, on Sunday? Couldn't give anyone a compliment, obviously devastated by the way they lost the match. Benji Marshall was outstanding in the second half after a poor first half, and with him and Farah and a defence which is coming together, I think the Tigers here. What am I saying? Which game are we talking about? The Knights, Broncos?
The Knights versus the Broncos.
You've got me
the
going
Tigers on the brain.
But I'm going to tip them anyway.
Yeah.
I will get the Tigers.
Right.
But I will tip the Broncos
All
here.
right, then. Well, I'm going to tip the Broncos as well.
And I do tip the Tigers to beat the Knights last week too.
No, you did.
Now I do.
You are a Tiger man.
Yeah, and
you tipped them to have a draw the week before.
Tip them.
I'll 40.
I love tipping them 4 days on.
Canberra versus Penrith. I love these games because it reminds me of the early 90s when they contested those great grand finals. The Raiders with some exciting young talent, the Panthers with some exciting young talent. So two of the emerging teams in the competition here.
Yeah, and I'll have to go the Canberra Raiders. I think they would have learned a fair bit from the Bulldogs game last week. Michael Ennis was outstanding, and he kept the Dogs in it all game. And I have to go the Raiders at home, even though Penrith did have a win on Monday night. They've got the short turnaround. That does hurt teams, Canberra to win.
Yeah, Saturday night in Canberra. Not easy there, but...
And it's going to be cold. Winter is hit.
How cold is it now?
Oh, Piccadilly.
It's freezing. I'm going to tip Penrith here.
Hence the jacket.
Yeah, that's exactly right. The black jacket as well. The Panthers for mine. I think they can win. I think they've got some confidence in the camp. Geez, he's pulled a rabbit out of the hat with Luke Walsh starting on Monday night. Mathew Elliott, hasn't he? He had an enormous game, the young halfback.
Yeah, it was an area that they struggled with. They were trying to put guys out of position in there, Jared Sammett and Luke Walsh. Well, he did enough. I remember when he hit the scene for Newcastle and Brian Smith gave him a start as just a very young boy, and he played very well in the game at Gosford. Well, they're pretty rich in talent around the halves. Newcastle, he's gone to Penrith, performed well. I think he will do another good job for them. I just don't think that the Raiders will lose at home on a Saturday night.
All right, then. Well, $1.67.
Well, this Saturday night.
Canberra, Penrith 2.10. I'm going to go with the Panthers there at the Valley. Now, this is a game, this one. The Dragons versus the Warriors. Wynn Stadium, plenty of Dragons players playing for a crack at rep football. State of Origin coming up. Test teams as well to be named. And the Warriors, well, they were terrific against the Melbourne Storm at Olympic Park. This is going to be a cracking game, this one. Nothing in it.
Yeah, nothing in it, but the Dragons at home at Wynn Stadium for me. They, again, were brilliant, weren't they? And Jamie Soward, the game of his life. The Warriors were excellent against Melbourne, but I just think the Dragons are the team with the momentum at the minute, and I think the Dragons will get home.
Yeah, I'm with you there too. Early trading says the Dragons are $1.45 and the Warriors are $2.42. So while we don't think there mightn't be a great deal in it, the Betfair punters seem to think here that the Dragons are the team to beat without doubt. Bulldogs versus the West Tigers. You've already tipped the Tigers. I'm going to tip the Bulldogs. There you go.
There you go. And there's good reason for tipping the Bulldogs. I think the Tigers will get home on the back of Marshall and Farah again. As long as those guys stay fit, they're a football team that if everyone else can come together, they've got a strong forward pack. And look, Ellis has offered a lot to them. And they've got great talent in the back line. Those two guys keep it together. I think the Tigers to beat the Dogs.
Yeah, what a great game of footy this is going to be. And the Tigers last week, fantastic to fight back and beat Newcastle. And they'll be hoping that Benji Marshall can continue his form. Is there a better sight in the game when he's in full flight?
He's the superstar, isn't he, of rugby league. And it does whet the appetite for the Test match, Australia taking on New Zealand. And the Australian side, led by Tim Sheens, will be desperate to return something back on the New Zealanders who beat them in the World Cup. They can't get the World Cup back, but at least they can beat them in this Test match coming up in Brisbane in May.
That's exactly right. Now, just before we wrap things up too, I've got to talk about the wooden spoon market because there's been a little bit happening in Betfair's wooden spoon market this week. The Sharkies are the favourites at $3.55. They were backed at $80 to win the spoon in the off-season. The second favourite at the moment on Betfair, Parramatta, $4.20. The Panthers are still third favourites at $6.60. $8 the Roosters. But what about, I can't believe Manly, 200 to 1 at the start of the season to win the wooden spoon. $12.50 and 6 favourites now.
I think one thing that we've all got to remember is it's round 8. Premierships aren't won in round 8. With if I can roll out a few cliches, and it's very difficult.
Yeah, well,
any
more of the jacket sleeve.
Got a million of them. You know, those in Eiffel Towers shouldn't throw stones. Someone said that to me once. Those in Eiffel Towers shouldn't throw stones. Yeah. Tell you what, you're brave if you're betting on the wooden spoon at this point, I think.
All right, there you go. Betfair.com's the place to go. All your best prices this weekend in round 8 of the National Rugby League. Premiership betting, top 4, top 8 betting. We've got the Dally M market up as well. We might have a chat about that next week as it starts to take shape. Thanks, Timmy.
Enjoy your football.
See you later.